Hello, everyone. Dr. Christine Smith here with a really wonderful guest for you today, Dr. Nawaz Habib, who is a specialist in the vagus nerve and has written a book called Activate Your Vagus Nerve, and he also has his own podcast called The Health Upgrade. So I'm just going to go ahead and invite him on because I think this is a really important topic, and not a lot of people totally understand the vagus nerve, and it's such a key to so many parts of health. And just trying to get technology to cooperate here, but our vagus nerve controls everything below the neck. So it's your 10th cranial nerve. It controls all of your organs, and it's just a huge component of health. It even affects your immune system, and it affects your brain function, and it affects your anxiety and all of those things. So just, I think it's just something people need to understand more. And I'm just working on inviting him on here. And, technology, sometimes it gives us a hard time, but hopefully he'll be on any minute here. But ultimately, vagal toning is something that it's just such a good trick, and it's so easy and it's free and you can do it at home. And I just saw a question like, does it affect fertility? Well, it affects your stress, which affects your cortisol, which affects your sex hormones, and stress 100% affects fertility. And if you're stressed, then ends up affecting your other hormones, and it affects your ability to process toxins in your body, and all of those things are related to fertility. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that the vagus nerve is involved in our health. Hello, Dr. Habib. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think this will be a really cool talk, and I know you and I met quite a while ago, and we've been wanting to do this for a bit. So he and I met at the Microbiome Labs conference, which was excellent and all about gut health, which the vagus nerve is tied hugely to. And I was just kind of telling people a little bit about you, but I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and how you got into this niche, and we'll take it from there.
Certainly. I'm lucky enough to have gone through my own health struggles. I'm a chiropractor by profession, and just like a lot of us health practitioners that were unsatisfied with the answers we were given previously, we decided to do something about it or find a different avenue, and went through that functional integrative world and found answers to the root causes behind these issues that were happening to us, and took action against those particular challenges. And I phrase it in that way in particular. I was lucky enough to go through those challenges, because without having experienced those challenges, I certainly would not have gotten into the position that I'm in today. As a chiropractor, I'm always really interested in the neurological side of things, understanding the effect of the brain on the body, how the brain manages all of the different processes within the body. And during that time, there was a particular nerve that stuck out to me. And without fail, that was the vagus nerve. It just was unique to every other nerve in the body. We have skeletal nerves that go from our spinal cord to muscles to affect their motion. And so I want to lift something, I move my hand to be able to lift that thing. Those are skeletal nerves, they're necessary. We have sensory nerves that feel different things, that sense through the eyes, through the ears, etc. So we can have sensations and get information as to what's happening in our surroundings. But there are a couple sets of nerves that are a little unique, and these are the nerves that manage the autonomic nervous system. And these are the things that we don't consciously control. And the big piece to this is that there's two sides to this autonomic nervous system. One side is the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic chain, which starts off in the neck and goes down along the sides of the spine, but it doesn't go down through the spinal cord. It's in front, and it's a little unique, and we don't need to get into the anatomy, but that sends signals to all of our visceral organs to tell us that we are actually under stress. And it turns on certain areas and it turns off certain areas. It'll actually shut off the gut to some extent. It will cause blood vessels to constrict. It'll cause the heart to start racing. It'll cause our breathing to become faster. And these are all things that drive us towards this concept of fight or flight. And that's the sympathetic nervous system. On the other side of this, we have the controlling mechanism, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. And all of that information is signaled through the vagus nerve. And that's what was unique to me about this one, because the sympathetic chain was this whole set of nerves, each one going to a different organ, each one sending a different signal. But the vagus nerve, only one on each side, then they coalesce, come together, and then come down, and then go to literally every visceral organ within our body. It was unique. It was actually named vagus because it was vague. People didn't really understand why or what it did, because it just had such a broad connection. And that's really what drew me to it in the first place. And my research since has really driven this concept of understanding that the state of our body truly dictates what's going to happen to us and how we respond to those situations, whether we're in a sympathetic state or a parasympathetic state. We can get into what this all means for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a beautiful explanation. And, I think many healthcare practitioners often go through their own, we'll call it like a rite of passage, right? Because you have to understand what it's like to be on the other side. And it's very enlightening. And you never do you learn more than when you're learning about it in your own body. And I think what you're saying about the balance between the two is probably one of the most important things, because we'll talk about parasympathetics and sympathetics and fight or flight and rest and digest. But the way that we function in the world is this balance between the two. And our world has a tendency to stimulate us into the sympathetic dominance that he's talking about. And it's just the way our world is set up. Like, we're not really supposed to drive 60 miles an hour on a highway. Like, that's stressful, worrying about if you're going to die from the car next to you. And we don't really interpret it that way because we do it all the time. But those are like the little things that tend to push us into overdrive. Or, the way, especially in like the States, that we have work set up where it's like you're only valuable if you're always producing and you're always working and you're always working more and you're always working beyond that 9 to 5, versus understanding that there is value in recovery and rest and play, which is what the vagus nerve helps us do. It's like what gets activated when you're laying on a beach and you have nothing to worry about. And so there's a balance between the two, because we need sympathetics, right? Like, that's how you get stuff done. That's how you take an exam. That's how you produce and get your work done. But you have to allow time for the vagus to replenish. Otherwise, your organs can start to break down over time. So let's just kind of dive right in. Like, what do you think has been one of the most important things around increasing education around the vagus nerve, especially in clinical outcomes, like especially in writing your book? Like, what have you found in your own practice?
So fun bit of information for you and everybody out there. Book number 1, which is Activate Your Vagus Nerve, has been out for nearly 5 years now. And that was a prompt for me to update some of the information, because a lot of new info has come out over the last few years. The vagus nerve has really started to take on this more mainstream understanding. People know what it is a little bit more. And so book number 2 is complete, at least the first draft, and will be coming out in February of this year. So Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve, and you guys are the first to hear about this. Will be out in February of 2024. Very, very excited to share that with all of you. In specifically trying to talk about kind of what this is, you use the analogy of the car, and I just want to kind of adapt this, and I think this is really helpful. A car is only really useful if it has both an accelerator and a brake. Okay, a car needs to be able to move. We need to be able to get places with the use of that car. We need to be able to push the accelerator, get it to take us where we want to go. But if we don't have brakes to slow us down, then the car actually becomes a danger, right? To those around us, to ourselves, to the people that are in the car with us, it can actually become really dangerous. If the brake pads or the brake line is cut, or something isn't there to help slow us down safely, then a car actually becomes really dangerous. And so that thing that helps to slow us down is the parasympathetic nervous system, is the vagus nerve. So why I think this is a really important kind of topic for what we are doing and what I've learned is that this is the ultimate statement. We cannot heal when we are in a sympathetic state, period. We are incapable of healing when we are in fight or flight. Our bodies are primed to become inflammatory, to become triggered, to have the accelerator simply pushed constantly and not have the brakes activated is actually a straight up sign that you're going down an inflammatory triggering pathway. You cannot heal if you are in a sympathetic state, hands down. And what that means is that if your vagus nerve is not signaling well, if you're not getting able to or not able to send out signals through that nerve for various reasons, it's because the brakes have been worn down because they've been trying for so long to slow down that car and it's just not working the way that you need it to. And so what we need to do is to teach people how to rebuild those brake pads. We need to teach people this is what causes the brake pads to break down. Here are all of the different stressors, all of the different challenges, whether they're kind of the daily financial stressors or the psychological stressors of our childhood or physical trauma from a car accident or something along those lines. All of these can physically decrease the capacity of the vagus nerve to function. Once we understand those stressors, then we have to start to measure where we at. Right? This is where the GPS analogy really comes in. The GPS needs to know where we're at, needs to know where we want to go, and then it calculates a route to make that work. And so we test things like heart rate variability. We test things like the saying test, where we look at the uvula and the movement of the palate. All of this info is in both of the books, by the way. Lots of other great little tools that we can use. The BOLT score for breathing oxygen level test and carbon dioxide capacity. These are all little tools to help us know where we're at and have a goal as to where we want to go. And then the last thing is to actually start to do the exercises. Some of these are foundational exercises. Some of these are tools that we all have just basically, for the most part, and not everybody, but a lot of people have forgotten how to do. And the number one here is breathing. We generally, as an entire, let's call it species, but it's really only the people that are heavily stressed, have forgotten how to breathe correctly, right? Many people are breathing through their mouth. Many people are breathing with their chest a lot more than you realize. In fact, I'm kind of doing it myself right now. And what we want to do is to train our foundational exercises, train our breathing to be really optimized, get ourselves into that parasympathetic state. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and there's actually really cool science as to why this system, when we are in a sympathetic state, actually primes our immune system to become hyper-inflammatory, hyper-activated. So it's a really cool, very important thing to understand.
That was so informative, and I agree with everything that you said, especially the part about you can't heal if that system isn't activated. Like, you just can't. And in physiology, we talk about it, and you guys might have heard me talk about this before, but catabolic state, which is like a breakdown state, and an anabolic state. And our bodies are amazing, but if we're in a fight or flight state, we are breaking down pieces of our body to use it for fuel for what we need to do to run away from the tiger. But in today's society, that tiger is things like bills, or the boss that you have to see every day, or a friendship that's been disrupted, or worrying about if there's something going wrong with your home. And those things can be long-term. Or like if you're a student and you're in school, that's a chronic state of stress. Like the exam is this looming tiger all the time. Or if you're, an employee and you're working on a lot of projects and you have a lot of stress at work and you have deadlines, that's a looming tiger all the time. So this is how we get caught in that kind of upregulated sympathetic state. And then a lot of people, like if we dive into the neurology of stuff really quick, a lot of people don't realize that our stress states are actually chemically addictive, much like cocaine. So you can get addicted to your own stress chemistry, and you can get addicted to this hyper-sympathetic state. And that is why when people like start to meditate and they've never meditated before, they hate it, because it's basically like going through withdrawals. You're going through withdrawals of your own chemistry that you're addicted to. And then there's also, other more like psychological underlying components of like, if you have grown up in a hyper aware state because of your environment, there's this piece of you that doesn't feel safe feeling safe because you feel like you haven't like covered your bases. You haven't looked at all the things that you need to. So things that he's talking about, these are tools, and we're going to dive into a couple different tools, but tools that you can use to start to activate the other side of your nervous system to break your addiction to your stress chemistry, whether that's chemical or mental or whatever. And speaking with another chiropractor is always fun because we get to talk about the main foundational structure that we talk about in chiropractic, which is thoughts, traumas, toxins. And I work in applied kinesiology, which talks about mental stress, physical stress, and chemical stress. Very similar. So we have to address all of those things in holistic care, which is why like you can have an injury that will put you into a sympathetic state because your body is protecting itself. You can have a chemical exposure, like an environmental exposure, like mold or all the pollution that we have to deal with, or depending on your job, maybe you have some kind of weird chemical exposure at your job that you're not thinking about, or maybe your workplace has mold in the air vents or in the walls, which is more common than people realize. And that's why sometimes when you go to work, you're more irritable or like you don't feel totally well, or everybody has that weird cough. Those are all chemical exposures. And then we have the mental, which is how like your past history and how that colors how you perceive your world, and then currently what's going on in your life. And the perception is always what triggers a stress response or not, which is why some people can get PTSD and some people don't, even after going through the same scenario. But everything that we're talking about, the vagus nerve is a tool to help bring you back to center. And obviously nutrition and lifestyle and all of those things are still incredibly important. But sometimes, like, I am always an advocate for meditation, but some people are like, I literally can't. And that's because your brain is stuck in this like sympathetic state. So the vagus nerve is a way to start to work on your body so that your mind can follow. And that can be a really nice way to enter into things. And I love the car analogy. I think that's great. So yeah, what are your thoughts? I could see you kind of percolating on what we were just talking about, but go for it. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's great to hear you kind of bring this up. And I broke down the different types of stressors in the new book. So very similar kind of breakdown to what you're explaining, but time and time again, like when I work with people in a functional medicine capacity, what I'm doing is I'm really digging into like a past history, and I'm really trying to work through a timeline as to like, okay, 13 years ago something happened to you, and 6 months, 8 months after that is when you started having symptoms of this new health condition, right? Um, I've it time and time again, there's some sort of either psychological or physical stressor that happened during that time. I've had multiple patients that lost a family member and then had a major stress reaction following, and then had to, cope for a period of time. And once things started to settle, their body started to notice these symptoms. And these are common reactions that I see, very, very similar stories. And obviously every story, every individual is going to have unique challenges, unique pathway, unique timeline. But once you understand what that timeline is and you can attribute it back, you can actually start to build closure and say, okay, well, this is why it's happening. This is potentially a root cause that's triggering it. It can be a Lyme exposure. It can be you're sensitive to some sort of chemical that's been sprayed in food. It can be so many different potential things. And so understanding why something happened in the first place and understanding the timeline as to how these things developed is very empowering for a lot of people, because at the end of it, once you know what caused it, you have hope because you can start to change something in the future. One of one of my favorite lines by far as to what I do as a chiropractor, what I do as a functional practitioner with my patients, is that the doctor's job is to distract the mind while the body does the healing. And it's, for me, that's empowering, because now I know what I'm trying to do is to help you understand why it happened in the first place, give you the resolve, give you the opportunity to say, something happened here. It may or may not have been my fault, but now I'm empowered to do something about it. And you start to shift the perception that the person has, start to help them see it as something that was positive, and be able to take positive steps to make their future even better than it was.
And perception is such an important part of healing. I'd almost argue it's the most important part of healing. Like,
100%.
which is why, like, practitioners, if you're watching this, the way that you talk to your patients is super important. And for any just normal people watching this, the way you talk to yourself and to your body is super important. So if you are dealing with illness or something, instead of telling yourself that you're ill or telling yourself that you're sick, you tell yourself that you're healing. And it's a completely different signal that you send to your body. And just because we're talking about conditions, I'd like to, especially since we met at Microbiome Labs, I'd love to dive a little bit into just how all of our organs are interconnected with this, from our adrenal glands to our guts to our blood pressure. And, you know, the vagus nerve actually has more signals going from your organs back up to your brain than from your brain to your organs. So we have a whole additional brain essentially located in our guts called the enteric nervous system. And a lot of people also don't know, and this is being researched more and more, that there can be retrograde, meaning backwards movement of molecules from your gut into your brain. So if you have a really unhealthy gut, it can contribute to brain health later in your life. And not even later, like immediately, but it can contribute to like neurodegenerative diseases later in life. And it's like all like the stress pathway that we're talking about, that's your adrenals, right? Your adrenals are a huge part of activating the sympathetic pathway. If they're on all the time and we start to get that breakdown state and that adrenal fatigue, then our gut actually starts to sometimes become leaky, and we can start to get immune reactions to simple things like food that we're not supposed to have immune reactions to. And then your immune system gets upregulated and oversensitive, like he's talking about. And then you become more chemical sensitive. And then when you become more chemical sensitive, things just bother you more, and then it stresses out your system more, and then you get mental stress, and it just contributes to this whole cascade. So let's dive a little bit into how the gut is affected and everything that you've learned, and how it actually affects our microbiome based on our own like neurotransmitters and hormones that we're producing and things like that.
Yeah, no question about it. You've really hit on an important point here. So 80% of the information on the vagus nerve is going from organs up to the brain. 80%. Most people, when they think vagus nerve, when they think nerves in general, they think it means brain to body or brain to muscle or brain elsewhere. A lot more signals are coming in than you realize. We need to process what's going on in our environment, and not just in our external environment, but a lot more than you realize from our internal environment. This is a process called interoception, understanding or feeling what's happening within our body. And this is something that we've all experienced without really realizing that we have. You know that feeling you get when you have butterflies in your stomach because you're about to do a big presentation, or you ate something that wasn't agreeing with you, and you feel that thing in your stomach where you're like, oh, something's not right, I'm just not feeling well. That is interoception. And what's happening is there's some sort of reaction, whether inflammatory or anxiety kind of driven or sympathetic in nature, that is being signaled through your immune system and other cells that are present in each of these organs, sending signals through the vagus nerve up to the brain to say something's not right. And the vagus nerve has to function to be able to send those signals up really, really well. When we get those signals up to the brain, this helps to trigger other reactions to occur. And what's really cool is when the vagus nerve makes its way into the brain stem, because it doesn't go into the brain directly, it goes to the brain stem. It goes to 4 different nuclei, 2 it goes into and 2 it comes out of. And one of those is called the nucleus tractus solitarius, the nucleus of the solitary tract. And this is a really, really important spot, because when it signals upwards, and you're going to love this, Christine, it goes up to the locus coeruleus, where it activates neurotransmitter activation, specifically in the norepinephrine, helps trigger focus. It triggers our ability to be aware. So it increases our awareness, which is really important. From here, it goes to so many different areas. Locus coeruleus is like this hub within the brain stem, and then that goes up into the entire cerebrum. But one of those pathways goes to the hypothalamus, where it then triggers pituitary activation and increases adrenocorticotropic hormone, literally activating the adrenal glands through a hormonal activation that then occurs. The HPA axis, when you are activating the vagus nerve effectively and you're getting parasympathetic signals in, will help to lower the production of cortisol. we actually can affect our adrenals directly when the vagus nerve is working really well through this neural pathway up into the brain. Really, really cool. You mentioned the gut, and I quickly want to just kind of mention this as well. There's a really interesting reaction that occurs when somebody has a head injury. So these are whiplash, car accidents, slip and fall injury, head injury from whatever incident could have occurred. When we have a head injury, one of the first reactions that occurs is our brain becomes a little bit leakier. We have this area around our blood vessels called the blood-brain barrier, which essentially is making sure that no toxins get into the brain. And for a short period of time, that blood-brain barrier becomes a little bit leaky after an injury like this. This is directly correlated to increasing the leakiness in our gut. And that happens through the vagus nerve being signaled, saying, hey, we're in an inflammatory state. Something needs to go give here. And so we have this reaction that occurs when we hit our head, our gut becomes leaky. The same reaction occurs when our gut becomes leaky, our brain becomes more leaky. Because those two areas, those barriers, whether the gut barrier or the blood-brain barrier, actually are produced from the same somites when we are developing fetuses. So the blood-brain barrier, the brain itself allowing toxins in, and the gut itself allowing toxins in, are heavily, heavily linked to one another. And so it really goes to show your food is going to play a really important role. Your microbiome plays a massive, massive role in your overall health, your brain health, all of these different things. It's this really interesting cascade, and it's very, very important to understand that any injury that might have occurred in the past may be the triggering event for a leaky gut that led to digestive issues. But that's often overlooked when you're talking to a conventional doctor, unfortunately, because these things aren't thought of.
Hugely. And let me just present this for anyone that doesn't know. The neurological community is now classifying PTSD as a brain injury. So if you go through PTSD or a really stressful event like losing your home or losing your job or losing your health or losing a loved one in whatever form that takes, that can actually trigger leaky gut. And it can go the other way. So if you get leaky brain, leaky gut, and also if you get leaky gut, it can sometimes turn into leaky brain, which is why gut stuff is so highly associated with depression and anxiety. And I cannot tell you how many people I have worked with where they have been struggling for a long time with their mood and their zest for life and feeling purposeful and just feeling a little bit lost. And then all of a sudden you kind of make a few food shifts and it's like the lights turn back on for them. And they're like, I didn't realize I was living in this cloud of inflammation in my brain, because that's really what it is. It's like inflammation in the gut and inflammation in the brain. They go bi-directionally. So either one is really going to affect the other, which is why if you get injured or you're going through something stressful, even though you tend to crave those probably not so great comfort foods, it's a really important time to eat well for your body, which, you know, that's different for everybody based on your body and your immune system and what you might have reacted to in the past. But in general, a pretty good focus is protein and vegetables. Like, that's a pretty good place to start. Always consult your practitioner, but in general, that's a pretty healthy approach. And just everything that we're talking about, this is why I wanted to have him on, because these are the things you can do at home for free. And like some of the physical tools that we'll get into, like those are also things you can do at home for free. And that is why, you know, meditation sometimes includes things like what's called oming, right? Where you kind of make that om, because that humming actually activates your vagus nerve and it changes your neurochemistry. And if you're stuck in a stress cascade, that is how you can reverse it based on the nuclei he was just telling you about, where it goes up and it literally turns down your cortisol. And this affects things like your blood pressure, because cortisol and your adrenals regulate your blood pressure. So if you are struggling with high blood pressure, like obviously you always want to investigate your arterial health as well, but it's usually tied to inflammation and it's usually tied to stress. And if you can start to regulate the stress pathway, it will downregulate both of those things. So yeah, what are some of your favorite tools when working with this complex system? And I know, like, if you're open to talking about it too, a lot of people may have heard the term polyvagal theory, but
Yeah.
not everyone totally understands what it means. So I'd love to hear your take on that too.
when I first read about polyvagal theory, it kind of went over my head. I was like, what is he trying to explain to me? And I've been able to simplify it down, and I'm actually starting to use some of the tools from Dr. Stephen Porges, who is the developer of that theory. And where, in the most simple form, and you've alluded to this already in our conversation, is that it comes down to safety. It comes down to the feeling of being safe. If we, as children, have some sort of situation where our family, our home environment, or something didn't feel safe, if we were threatened by or felt threatened by something that happened with a parent, something that happened with being victims of a crime, or a physical stressor that occurred in not only ourselves but somebody around us, a feeling of safety can go away. And when we don't feel safe, what we're actually doing is we're priming our body to turn off the vagus nerve and to not be functional. And the polyvagal theory is this concept that when we are developing, if we are taught to be safe, taught to create that feeling of safety really effectively, what happens is we build up a very strong vagus nerve. And we are capable of being more resilient to challenges that, when we're adults, can be a little bit more challenging for us. We don't tend to go into from a vagally activated parasympathetic state to a sympathetic fight or flight state as easily, and we're able to regulate really well. But if we didn't have that feeling of safety when we were children, it's very easy to shift to fight or flight. And in fact, fight or flight's not where it ends. There's a whole nother level to this where we go into a freeze state, which is known as dorsal vagal activation. And this is something that has happened to a lot of people, especially over the last few years. Because if you haven't noticed, people tend not to feel safe when they're threatened by a respiratory virus or the challenges associated with said respiratory virus. So what's happened is so many people have gone into this freeze state. They've essentially shut themselves off from home. They've essentially shut themselves off entirely. And somebody just asked a question, does continuously being startled mean anything? 100%, absolutely 100% you're on. That's likely a sign of either sympathetic or dorsally vagally activated state. You're literally in this hyper primed state to be in fight or flight almost all the time. And that's not ideal. That's the accelerator being pushed all the time and the brakes just not working.
And can I throw in one thought for this? So when this is happening, because your vagus nerve stimulates all of your organs, if you're in an overactivated state sympathetically, your organs don't function as well. So your gut is not going to contract to promote bowel movements. Your liver is not going to be detoxifying as well. You're not going to digest your food as well. Your stomach isn't going to produce your stomach acid as well. Your heart is not going to regulate its heartbeat as well. So that is why people can start to have weird, like a whole conglomeration of weird health issues when they're stuck in this state long term.
Yeah, it's the single reason why almost every chronic health condition occurs is because we have been pushed into a sympathetic state for too long. And you mentioned inflammation. I just want to come back to that. We'll get to tools in a moment. The when we talk about kind of autonomic nervous system and rest digest versus fight or flight, it can be a little abstract. And so even for me, it felt a little abstract. I didn't fully understand the pathway by which, or the mechanism by which changes occurred in our body. And so this is something that I needed to bring into the second book. And I'm going to share this with you because I think it explains how it all works. The target cells of the vagus nerve are not the cells in the lining of the gut, are not the cells in every organ that it goes to. It's a very particular set of cells within each of those organs. And these are called macrophages. Macrophages are our innate immune cells, okay? Innate immune cells, literally these macrophages, when we developed, are these initial cells that went out and they managed the production of every single one of our um, organs when it was developing. And those cells stayed in every single one of those organs. And these macrophages took up residence. They're called tissue resident macrophages. In our lungs, they're called alveolar macrophages. In our liver, they're called Kupffer cells. In our skin, they're called Langerhans cells. In our brain, they're called microglial cells, which are really, really important. A lot of people don't realize microglial activation is at the top of the list when it comes to chronic conditions of the brain. And most importantly, in our gut, they're intestinal macrophages. These are the target cells of the vagus nerve. When the vagus nerve signals out, it uses a neurotransmitter exclusively called acetylcholine. And when acetylcholine is sent out to these macrophages, there's a very particular receptor that the acetylcholine attaches to called the alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. Too technical, don't get into it. But that receptor, when it's activated, actually tells those immune cells to turn off inflammation, to actually stop the signaling of cytokines that are inflammatory in nature. And that is the controlling mechanism of how it actually slows down inflammation. This whole pathway is actually something that's been discovered over the last 22 years called the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. It's the vagus nerve that drives it. It is through the spleen that it goes out to all of the organs that are not innervated by the vagus nerve, but it's the vagus nerve itself that sends signals to all of the organs that it is directly linked to, that sends acetylcholine out, and it will activate the production of these anti-inflammatory cytokines and really shift the presence of these macrophages to become more regulatory cells. And so they actually help to clean up the issues that are going on, maintain the function of these organs, ensure that the gut is working well. So much so that when those macrophages are activated by acetylcholine effectively, it shuts down leaky gut. It's actually been shown that when vagus nerve is stimulated, you actually increase the production of zonulin and occludin, essentially getting those cells tighter together. That we actually tighten the junctions in our gut. We actually have improved function of our alveolar macrophages, and we're able to get rid of challenges like asthma and COVID breathing issues when we stimulate the vagus nerve, done through exercises or external devices and stuff like that as well. So really, really cool stuff in here. The cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway is how those macrophages either become primed for inflammation when it's not working, or to shut down inflammation when it is working.
So I'm just going to repeat what he just said because it was so important. So basically, he was just saying that your immune system can get overactivated unless you have proper stimulation of the vagus nerve. This would be associated with conditions like autoimmune or hyperinflammation or neurodegenerative diseases. And there's this interesting thing about when you start to get leaky gut and you start to get food sensitivities and you activate a part of your immune system called complement factor. Your microglia in your brain are like the janitors of your brain. They're supposed to maintain your neurons. If you have too much complement factor from your immune system getting overactivated, it accidentally tags your neurons for deletion by your own immune system. Let that sink in for a moment when we're wondering why everyone has neurodegenerative diseases in a world full of chemicals and fake food and stress. So this is why things like meditation can help almost any health disease, is because you're activating your vagus nerve. Now, we're going to talk about some other physical tools that you can use as well, because there's a whole bunch of different ways to enter into it, but it's about feeling safe. Like if I was going to say what meditation is in a really small way, it's a time that you set aside for your body to feel safe. That's why you can do it in 8 million different ways, but have a really similar outcome. But it's time that you take to go inward and allow your body to be in that state. And then there's physical ways that we can stimulate it, and there's biohacking ways that we can stimulate it. You know, usually like an amalgamation of everything can be helpful, but some people resonate differently with different things. And that's why we do this, is so that you know what's out there, so that you know what you can explore. And I just want to check, because I saw a couple questions. So someone said so gastroparesis, which is like your gut can't move things well and you struggle having bowel movements because by vagus nerve irregularity. Yes, 100%. And then it also said, I thought H. pylori damaged the stomach nerve or vagus nerve and leaky gut. Kind of all related. So H. pylori, I'm going to, actually, you just talk about that. I'm going to let you dive into that. Go for it.
I love it, and it's a great question. And it's the two working together. And when the vagus nerve is not sending signals to the stomach, meaning that we're incapable of increasing stomach acid production, we're incapable of the motility that's required for our stomach to literally physically churn and break down the food that comes in, it's also incapable of shutting down or killing off the H. pylori that's present and moving it through the gut. And so it's a combination. H. pylori is rampant. It's everywhere. And in very small amounts, it's actually, for some people, quite protective. But when the amounts become exorbitant, when they become excessive, is when the damage occurs. And that happens when we are incapable of having vagus nerve function turn on and physically move it out of the gut. So really, really important to understand that.
And same issue can contribute to SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If you don't have enough stomach acid to break down your food, you have food particles that sit in your gut that's not moving things along very fast. And then the bacteria that are there that are supposed to be helpful end up fermenting this food and just overgrowing. And then you get a whole bunch of bloating when you eat food, and then it can contribute to other issues. And then if you have an overgrowth, sometimes it can contribute to leaky gut. And then when we get some leaky gut, you can get toxins accidentally leaking into your bloodstream. So you're almost accidentally poisoning yourself from the inside out. So the first thing that we have to focus on is getting that gut lining to heal, because you also can't just go take a whole bunch of probiotics, which is one of the things that people think about. And it depends on the state that your body is in. Most of the time when people ask me questions about protocols, my answer is always, it depends. It depends on where you're at. And so if you're in a super inflamed state, probiotics do induce a little bit of inflammation. Like the way that they work is they go and they knock out bad bacteria and they take their place. It's a little bit of a battle that goes on. If you're super inflamed, you might react poorly to more inflammation. So it might be that we have to calm the inflammation and work on healing the gut lining, and then you can start to turn over the gut. And I think that's sometimes where things will get missed. And if you're in such a state of inflammation that you can't even take like magnesium, which I've had a number of clients who've gone through this, that is when I start with the vagus nerve.
No question. And it's awesome to hear you say these things. I know you practice this way since we've met and had a couple conversations about it. The first thing that somebody needs to do without fail is prime their state in order to create change, right? Like you and I have both heard this story dozens of times when people come in and they're like, I've tried all these supplements, I've added all these probiotics. I come in with a list of 48 different supplements that my last practitioner recommended to me and all these medications. And more often than not, they're trying to throw darts at this board that's in a sympathetic state. This person is incapable of having these darts hit the right spot. We can't heal in a sympathetic state, period. What we need to do is to shift our state. When we activate the vagus nerve, we're not curing anything. It's not a cure for any condition. It's not linked to an ICD-10 or ICD-11 code as to one of those 10,000 diagnoses. What the vagus nerve does is it shifts the state and primes you to be capable of healing. When you are capable of healing, then with the targeted approach to help support the right probiotics, the right gut bacteria, the right dietary approach, the right supplements, the right nutrients that might be missing, you can go to the very basics and have the absolute best results for that person because their state has been primed. Their body has been primed for a healing response. And that can only happen when your body shifts to parasympathetic.
Yep. 100%. And I've seen this question come up a few times, so I just want to answer. People are like, how do I find a good functional medicine doctor? How do I find out about this? It is one of those things where you just kind of have to shop until you find someone that you resonate with. And if you're looking for certifications, looking for someone that's trained in functional medicine is usually a good way to go. There's different functional medicine training programs. So, one isn't always better than the other. It's more about the practitioner and their training and how do they spend their extra time? Do they spend it at conferences, learning more stuff and staying up to date on research and changing their mind and their opinion based on what's happening currently and based on understanding their client? And then my other huge qualifier for a practitioner, how many questions do they ask you? They should be asking you a ton of questions, and they should not dismiss you, and they should not dismiss what you're going through, and they should be able to be personable with you and hold space for you. And when it comes to testing, like that's complex. That's why doctors go to school for 20 years. So it really depends on what's happening for you, because like, yes, we can test and see if you have leaky gut, but if your adrenals are so out of whack that you can't heal, then we have to address those first. And if your whole system has become dysregulated so that your thyroid's not functioning, well, we also have to check on the thyroid. And if that's not functioning, which is actually a signal to your mitochondria, like a lot of people miss the mitochondria and the whole worrying about their thyroid thing. If the signal is going, but the factory for energy isn't working, it's not going to matter. So you have to address mitochondria. So that is where working with a practitioner is helpful. So searching for holistic wellness or applied kinesiology or functional medicine practitioner, those are all going to be like a good approach to things. And everyone has different approaches, which is why you have to shop around and find what resonates with you. But you know, in general, there is a gut lab, like a stool lab that you can run where it analyzes your stool and it tells, and this is more than just the basic one that they'll run at like LabCorp that just tells you if you have a deadly infection or not. This is one that tells you, like, do you have parasites? Are you dealing with good bacteria that are out of balance? Which bacteria levels are out of balance, therefore which probiotic is best for you. If you take a probiotic and you're bloating and uncomfortable, it's probably not the right one for you. And it also tells you like what is the extent of your leaky gut, like how much leakiness do you have. However, if you have a whole bunch of food sensitivities, you have leaky gut. Like it's there. And so you can know that in different ways. And I'll actually be running a class just kind of about like how to read your labs more effectively next Wednesday. So if you want to use the link in my bio, you can join that and learn more. And then, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that you can do at home. Like I even ended up making an online course for people just because sometimes people don't need to come in if they just make some lifestyle changes. And so I just kind of teach you how to listen to your body, because listening to your body and understanding what he's talking about of like when you're in that wired and tired fight or flight state versus when you're actually in a healing state can be what you need to get your life regulated. But you have to learn how to listen to it, and you have to make time to listen to it. So for all those people who are like, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, you're going to run yourself into the ground if you're not feeling well. And one way or another, your body will force you to make time. So I suggest doing it sooner than later. But let's dive into some of those tools that you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about starting with the foundational stuff first, right? Where possible, and in the vast majority of cases, free tools are wonderful, and they're available to you thousands and thousands of times per day. The first one is breathing, no question about it. So a really simple one. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but we don't breathe correctly, and we can kind of assess how we're breathing moment to moment in a very, very simple way. And that is putting up one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly, stopping for a moment and taking 3 deep breaths, okay? And the depth of the breath doesn't matter, but just kind of keep an eye on it as you're going through this, that you want to listen to or experience the movement of either your chest or your belly, okay? So you're looking to see which hand is moving. Is it the hand that's on your chest that's expanding with every breath, or is it from your belly, right? Do we have motion occurring? What's really important to look at is we should be breathing using our diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle that separates the lungs and the thorax from the abdomen. And we often think this is important. We should be breathing with our diaphragm. It's this muscle that when it flattens out creates a vacuum that allows air to come into the lungs. Awesome. Exactly. What we forget about is that when that muscle is moving, it's actually creating motion and movement within the organs below. Huge, huge piece of the puzzle. It's actually massaging our stomach. It's massaging our intestines. It's massaging our liver, creating a motion pattern that needs to occur to tell us that we're in a parasympathetic state. And then those signals that are going up to the brain, that 80%, are being signaled that the vagus nerve should be on. We're in a state where we can digest. We're in a state where we're calm. Think of it this way. When we get startled, somebody had mentioned this earlier, somebody honks a horn or we hear a loud bang, what's the first kind of reaction, physical reaction we do is we immediately breathe in and we tighten up. We're protecting ourselves. We're in a threatened state. there's an immediate reaction towards not feeling safe. And what happens is our breath becomes short, shallow, and chest breathing occurs. So I want you to, I'm not seeing all of you, but put up your hand if you have tight traps, tight upper back muscles. We see this as chiropractors all the time. This is the most common thing we see. And the vast majority of the time, there's a postural component. But if you're not breathing using your diaphragm, you're breathing using your accessory breathing muscles. You're overworking your traps, your scalenes, your rhomboids, your upper back and neck muscles. These are muscles that tighten up so easily for a lot of people, and it's because you're breathing using the wrong muscles. You're using secondary muscles, not the primary. So doing that breath thing again, slowing down. I do this with my 6-year-old. I'm starting to do it with my 2-year-old all the time. We need to imagine there's a balloon in our belly, and we need to inflate that balloon with every in-breath that we take, or every inhale that we take. Slow it down. Everybody chill out, and we're breathing through our diaphragm as easily as possible. Slow it down. Slow it down. It's not about the depth so much. It's actually about the rate. And what's really cool is when we breathe in, we're immediately going into a sympathetic state. With every inhale that we take, we're just doing a micro activation of our sympathetic nervous system, ever so slightly. And so our heart rate actually very slightly elevates. As we actively exhale, we're going into a parasympathetic state. If we can learn to do this one little trick with our breathing, we can spend more time in a parasympathetic state and really work to increase vagus nerve function. And that is longer exhales, shorter inhales. Okay? Simplest tool that I've used that is really effective for a lot of people, 4, 7, 8. Okay? 4 seconds of inhale, 7-second hold, which is great for getting nitric oxide activation, breathing in through your nose. Our nose is our breathing tube. Our mouth is our eating tube. Breathe through your nose. So breathing in 4 seconds through our nose, holding for 7 seconds to give the air a chance to humidify and warm and get detoxified and cleared out through the nose. And then going down, holding for 7 and releasing for 8, ideally through your nose. Slow exhale. Slow extended exhale is very, very important for allowing you to get into that parasympathetic state for a longer period of time. So highly recommend trying 4, 7, 8 breathing. Absolutely a huge piece of the puzzle.
Yep. The breathing part I love, and that's why things like yoga can be really beneficial on a lot of levels, because people don't realize that yoga is actually a philosophy on life. And asana, yoga asana, the movement, is an opportunity to practice the philosophy. And a huge part of that is your breathing and breathing with your movement and learning how to control your breath in different ways. And there's nadi breathing where you can like switch sides and activate different parts of the brain. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways to use breath work. So if you've never explored breath work, just start YouTubing breath work and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Once you've kind of mastered that 4, 7, 8 concept, the idea of slowing everything down, then the next thing to do, just the same way as when you go to the gym and you're lifting weights or you've got like 100 pounds on your back doing back squats and you've mastered it, it's gotten easy to do 100 pounds, what do? You add more weight. You increase the stress level and you learn how to beat through that extra stress and teach yourself to do that. And so things like yoga, things like cold showers, things like cold plunges if you're up for it, things like Pilates, these are actually all built on learning to breathe while under stress, right? And breath work is by far, meditation includes breath, but breath work, learning to intentionally breathe effectively, you can shift your state so effectively. I love breath work. I do it on a weekly basis for sure. And it has to do with learning to be really technical and really intentional with how you use your breath to shift your state. There's no true other way than controlling your breath to make a shift to your vagus nerve actively by yourself.
Absolutely. And, when we start getting into the depths of this, like There's a reason it makes your meditation more powerful, because one of the ways that you start to move your own biofield and move your own energy in your body is with your breath. So as soon as we start moving our own energy and connecting with our own field, plus your breath forces you to be in the present moment. That's one of the other things about it. That's why basic meditation starts with focus on your breath. What's the texture? What's the speed? What's the temperature? What's it taste like? And it forces you to come into this present moment instead of worrying about everything in your life. And as you do this, you connect with your own biofield. You start moving your energy differently in your body. And for anyone who's like, oh, energy is woo-woo, let me just present it this way. They can measure your thoughts using a magnet that doesn't touch your head. That means you emit your own Wi-Fi. You have a biofield. It's just part of physics.
Yeah.
So all living creatures have a biofield. So when you start gaining control over this and moving it through your body, you can even use your breath to like direct it to a certain area. So let's say you're trying to heal your gut and you're trying to heal that immotility. You can direct your breath and your attention to your gut and in your mind tell your body what you want to happen. And there's this really old saying that says, where attention goes, energy flows and blood follows. So if you're trying to heal something, focusing on it and sending your breath to it intentionally, it's a really good way to start doing that.
And doing it with a healing breath, with positive words, with just the way you shift how you talk about or think about something actually really plays an important role, just to bring it back to what we talked about earlier. Absolutely. I also, from a tools perspective, would love to bring up kind of the humming, chanting, gargling, gag reflex activation. These are all simple tools that we can use to get vagus nerve activated. So humming, you mentioned the om sound. If you remember, while you're vocalizing, you're breathing out, right? We're doing an exhale, and om is meant to be held for a long period of time. That's a long exhale that goes with it. It's a very nasal sound. It can be a sound that you do with the mouth closed as well. So really cool that you're able to do that. While you're doing that, while you're humming, you're actually stimulating through branches of the vagus nerve, the muscles that are around the vocal cords and the muscles holding the airway open. These are the pharyngeal and the laryngeal branches of vagus nerve that go to those muscles. So that's a really great way to keep those areas open. Gargling is awesome. This is something I have people doing in the morning and the evening before they go to bed, or when they brush their teeth. It's kind of just tied to it. Taking a sip of water, holding it in the back of your throat, you're stimulating those same muscles, pharyngeal and laryngeal branches. You're ensuring you have an airway that's open, and you're essentially allowing your exhale to happen for a very long period of time. And the longer you're able to do that gargle as hard as you physically can, you're actually able to stimulate all of the nuclei of the vagus nerve. This has been shown through fMRI studies as well. So we're getting that full stimulation. And you know it's working without an fMRI. If you start to tear from your eyes while you're gargling, it's a direct sign that you're getting vagus nerve activated for sure.
Interesting. There's so many ways to do this, you know, and someone just asked, like, can grounding stimulate it? Like, yes, in a way. Yeah. Like, part of the biofield, part of the exchange of ions with the earth, and also just part of being present and coming into a calm, focused state and allowing your body to self-regulate. And I like what we're talking about here, right? Because these are all free tools that are located in your body. Like, you don't need anything to do these. There's like other biohacking tools and stuff that are cool. And if you'd like to comment on those, please do. But I'm a huge advocate for teaching people how to use their own body and teaching people about their own physiology. Something as simple as like singing or humming. So it's like if you hum while you cook, it's actually going to prep your digestive system for eating that meal. And that's just like a simple thing that you can throw into your life. And you know,
I do that with my kids actually. Before we have a meal, they're running around, it's chaos. We hum as a family. We buzz like a bee to slow everything down, and we end up actually just laughing and having fun, and it actually ends up being a meal that you can digest pretty easily. So it's awesome.
I love that. I'm going to use that for my parents and stuff. That's great. Well, I know we're kind of coming to the top of the hour here, and I want to respect your time because I know you're busy. Thank you so much for doing this. I think this has been really helpful for people. If people wanted to learn more about you or learn more about this or your book, like, where would you direct them?
Yeah, you can check out the book anywhere. It's in bookstores all over the place. Amazon. Activate Your Vagus Nerve. This one is My first one, Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve, is coming out in February of this year. You can find me, just follow me on Instagram, or you can find me on the web at drhabib.ca or drnavazhabib.com. And my clinic is called Health Upgraded. We do online work where we support people that are dealing with any health condition, whether it's chronic, inflammatory, or some other challenge. We want to push you into a state where you can heal, and we're teaching you all of the tools, tips, and tricks, and help you get your vagus nerve activated as much as it possibly can be so that you can heal and get yourself over your health challenges.
Beautiful. And I just want to speak to you guys, like, practitioners that also focus on the physical body outside of just nutrition, I think is really important. And like, I still do physical care in my practice in addition to online stuff, but I know that's one of the reasons that Dr. Habib likes some of the biohacking tools out there, is it's a way that he can still work with the physical body even when doing an online practice. So if you guys need extra help, like, feel free to reach out to us. Like, we're here for you. And if you're trying to find a functional medicine practitioner in your area, just kind of search for functional medicine. But that is one of the beauties of what has happened over the last few years, is that so much stuff has moved online. So it's really about finding who you resonate with and who's most important for you. But anyway, I hope this information was helpful, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure.
Again,
I want to just answer, there was a question that came through, and I quickly want to mention it because it's so linked. So the POTS, long COVID situation that a lot of people are dealing with, often the breathing, the gargling, the humming, it's just not quite enough. For people that are in a chronic, heavily inflammatory state, I'm a really big fan of non-invasive vagus nerve stimulation, whether done on the ear or the neck. I find the neck to be a little bit quicker, a little bit easier for people to include, but look it up. There are tools out there that are phenomenal for improving vagus nerve function through an electrical stimulation. That's one of the biohacking tools that you're talking about, Christine. For me, that is such a game changer. I've had Parkinson's patients have significant improvements. I've seen blood sugar levels come from like A1Cs in the 9s down to the 6s really quickly, including this in a care plan. The idea is shifting that state. And if we can use devices and electricity and tools like this to expedite that process, I'm all for it where possible.
I'm so glad that you said that, because yes, I think the blood pressure stuff is pretty important, especially after the last couple of years. So definitely check those things out. Reach out to us if you have more questions. You can follow us on Instagram, message us here, go to his practice website, which you said was healthupgraded.com, right?
Yep, healthupgraded.com.
Excellent.
Somebody mentioned Pulsetto. I have my Pulsetto device here. I have my Truvaga device upstairs. All of these vagus nerve stimulators are great.
If you have like an extra minute, why don't you just talk a little bit about those, since we didn't quite get to them, and then we can wrap up after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Vagus nerve stimulation is the use of an electrical field just directly over the actual physical branch of the vagus nerve. So it's located, we've got an auricular branch, so this is something that's been used in acupuncture for thousands of years. There's specific points in the auricular branches. Those are great, and only 1% of the fibers actually go to the vagus nerve auricular branch on the ear. But within the neck, we have the carotid artery, the jugular vein, and the vagus nerve sitting together. Literally, where you find your pulse is you've essentially found your vagus nerve. And so just kind of in front of that SCM muscle, to find that muscle, you can push against, and just in front of it right there, you'll find your pulse. And if you find your pulse there, that's the spot where your vagus nerve literally is going down through your neck, the big trunk of it. And it happens on both sides. When we say vagus nerve, we mean vagus nerves, because there's two of them, one on each side. And when we electrically stimulate, this is something that's been shown since the 80s. Epilepsy, asthma, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, PTSD, all of these conditions, and a whole bunch of other ones. Gastrointestinal gastroparesis there's a really good study that just came out on this for gastroparesis, IBS, IBD. None of these are cured. It's priming the body to be able to cure it. And then when you use the right probiotics, you use the right supplements, you use the right tools, you can really shift state. I speak on this topic now quite a bit, and HRV and vagus nerve have everything to do with one another. No question about it. So great question there, Anna. HRV is a direct sign of vagus nerve function, actually autonomic function. So the higher your HRV, the stronger your vagus nerve is signaling. The lower your HRV, the more sympathetic activation you have going on. And that's a sign of your resilience, your capacity to handle change or stress. Adaptive capacity is what you want. You want to be able to adapt to stress. Vagus nerve is key to making that work. So HRV, testing HRV using different tools, whatever you like to use, great way to assess where you're at, for sure.
Absolutely. And man, we could literally talk about this all day, but just if you've been stuck in a health state and you've been trying all the medical procedures and nothing has helped, just try this, give it a try, like ask him more questions, reach out to us. But I mean, again, everything that, for the most part, everything we talked about is free. So
yeah.
Just give it a try at home. And if you want to learn more, his book would be a great place for that. And he also has a podcast called the Health Upgraded Podcast. So you could learn more about it there. Thank you so much, Dr. Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
Any last thoughts before we wrap everything up?
At the end of the day, if you're dealing with a chronic health condition or something that's holding you back, and it's something that you've tried so many different things for, it's likely the fact that you have not been able to shift state and get into a healing state that's stopping you. And so getting into that healing state by far is the thing that needs to happen, and most of us are not doing. You can't fix a car while it's driving. You can't, like a mechanic needs the car to stop to be able to open the hood or prop it up on whatever. It needs to stop. You need to get into a parasympathetic state for it to actually get fixed. So that's by far the most important thing you can do.
That was a perfect way to sum everything up. I love that. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure if we get a bunch of questions, please comment below the video. Let us know what you thought. Let us know whatever other questions you have. I'm sure we could probably arrange this again and do a version 2 advanced. But thank you for your time today. Thank you guys for being curious, and reach out with any questions.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Bye.